There is nothing more powerful in the world than a good story. And this week at the Tour de France, we have been spoiled. We'll do our best on this week's show to retell them recapped, get action and reaction from those close to the action. And of course, we'll be with record-breaking Cavendish. Brilliant Bini. So let's get into this Reste Gruppetto. The week at the Tour de France began in Italy, with the trip to Turin being a slow one after what had been a blockbuster opening weekend. The expected sprint took place after a late crash, and when it came, it produced a moment for the history books. Eritrean superstar Biniam Girmay, already a trailblazer in the cobbled classics and at the Giro D'Italia, produced the power with impeccable timing to become the first ever black African rider to win a stage of the Tour de France. An incredible moment for world cycling, and a special one too for his Intermarché team, who had never previously won with any of their athletes at the world's biggest race. With four riders still tied on time at the top of the standings, another story developed soon after the finish in Turin, as Richard Carapaz became the first Ecuadorian ever to pull on the race leader's yellow jersey. The former Giro winner had now led all three Grand Tours. Hot on the heels of the best French start to the race since the 1960s, this was now fast becoming the fairy tale tour. Next up was the first contact with the Alps, the fourth stage leaving Italy via the mountains, and all set to finish in Valois. A last call for good coffee and pizza, as Sestriere and the mighty Galibier were taken on along the way. Over 2,600 metres at the top, never had the Tour gone so high, so soon. Any hopes that a hard-fought breakaway had of surviving were wiped out when the UAE Emirates Dream Team went to work with all of their power and might. One by one they came to pull, riding stars and champions off their wheels, on the way to setting a record ascent of the Galibier, capped off by a leader and two-time Tour winner in Tadej Pogačar, who went alone. Before the Slovenian attacked just under a kilometre from the top, those victims to the pace included race leader Carapaz, who would lose plenty of time. Pogačar went over the top with a small advantage on Jonas Vingegaard. But that then grew on the descent, with over half a minute put into rivals, who also included Remco Evenepoel and Primož Roglič. A 21st Grand Tour stage win for Poggi, although it's safe to say that he came of age a long time before notching up that number. The mountain action resulted in the yellow jersey swiftly returning to the shoulders of Pogačar and an Alpine GC shake-up. The day after the revolution was controlled by the sprinters, and it was a chance to rip up the record books. After a mostly slow, stress-free day on the way to Saint-Vulbas, this happened.
There is Mark Cavendish through the centre. He's hit the front here. Mark Cavendish is there. There's a crash behind. Mark Cavendish, this is history. First there was Merckx, now it's Mark Cavendish.
As well as that number 35 record-breaking finish for Mark Cavendish, there was further good news for Biniam, who pulled on the green jersey for the first time as he took the lead in the points classification. Much of the attention around Dylan Groenewegen had centred around a new nose-piece on his sunglasses. Were they aero gains? Was it to block out the sun? Did he want to feel like a superhero? Well, on stage 6 in another sprint, Bruce Wayne became Batman. Groenewegen beating an eventually relegated Jasper Philipsen to the finish in Dijon. Friday was time trial day, a 25-kilometre test around the Burgundy vineyards. It looked great, it was fast, and all the favourites came out to play. 37 seconds separated the big four on the day, with Victor Campenaerts showing that he was the best of the rest. Vingegaard finished fourth. Roglič was 3 seconds better than the Dane, but the big battle was between Pogačar and Evenepoel. The Belgian was up and stayed up over the course of the three-time checks, winning his first ever Tour de France stage by 12 seconds. But Poggi remained the leader. Stage 8 was another sprint, uphill this time and with some of the faster riders dropped. The green jersey taught those remaining a lesson. Nobody could touch him, and Biniam's second win provoked these scenes in the Eritrean capital, Asmara. After those celebrations in the streets, we were all set for a champagne finish to the first block of racing. But the fans should have really had popcorn at the ready, as the loop around Troyes turned out to be box office. Just under 200 kilometres to ride in the Champagne Hills, but with 32 kilometres to be ridden on 14 off-road sectors, proper gravel was on the route of the men's Tour de France for the first time ever. The action was on from the start, and it was non-stop. Chaotic, with a fight for a breakaway that eventually saw 14 riders up the road. The GC group almost caught them at different points with the battles to be on the sectors, Roglic having to rescue a worrying moment from behind a split, Pogačar attacking, Evenepoel doing the same, Vingegaard having to take a teammate's bike and following, but not crucially contributing, and Pog packing more of a punch in the finale, attacking once again. It all resulted in the breakaway just about able to hold off another group that included world champion Mathieu van der Poel. Jasper Stuyven looked like he'd possibly won it with a late attack, but he was caught just inside the final agonising kilometre. The result would be a third French win of the week, Anthony Turgis having his career high moment and winning for TotalEnergies, a lifeline for a team that has struggled for success in recent years. It was a blockbuster of a day on which everything seemed to happen, but nothing at the very top of the GC actually changed. Tadej Pogačar leads the Tour de France going into the second week of racing, 33 seconds ahead of Remco Evenepoel. Defending champion Jonas Vingegaard remains in third, and Primož Roglic has fought hard for fourth. We're all set up for another fine 6 stages to come this week. Over in Italy, it was the start of the second women's Grand Tour of the season, the Giro d'Italia women, with Elisa Longo Borghini, Italian champion on the road, winning the opening time trial in Brescia by a single second. We'll review the Giro d'Italia women and get expert opinion in full on next week's show. Before we carry on, we know that you do not want to miss a single moment of the Tour de France. I know that some of you have to be at work. It's not all holidays, is it, round here? But don't fear. Eurosport Cycling YouTube channel, subscribe, like this video, comment below and chat about all the big moments with all of the rest of the Eurosport Cycling community. So it's rest day time. I thought it'd be a good time to catch up with our very own Matt Stevens on the ground in France. He was having breakfast with producer Pete. Well, Matt, it's rest day. Coffee
Cheers.
for you. How is it going, my man? Well, I guess the most important question where you are is, what time does breakfast close?
Breakfast closes in about 10 minutes, but me and Pete have had quite a leisurely breakfast. Producer Pete, of course. We have got a lovely coffee, and we've adopted a technique, because not all coffee machines are particularly good at making coffee, so it's an espresso, pause, then milk on the top, and you're good to go. 7 out of 10.
What's going on today anyway, rest day? What's it like for you? I imagine there's a few bits and bobs to do, washing machine and all that?
Yeah, there's a well-needed rest day for all of us. It's been a great week, as we all know, from a racing perspective, and there's a real intensity, especially in our role at the beginning and the end of the day, but we're all in need of a rest day. Yeah, laundry to be done, hopping on this pod. Then this afternoon, well, I've got to go and get a couple of little bits for my motorbike adventure, which starts tomorrow.
We will talk about that in a minute, yes.
Yeah, and then I'm going to have a sit-down chat with Mark Cavendish.
Wow.
To talk all things, well, Cavan, that historic win the other day, which was absolutely amazing. So a nice afternoon, and hopefully I'll get a little ride in as well at some point. So a nice, relatively leisurely day with some little bits of work, but not too stressful. And we're in a lovely environment, a beautiful hotel in the countryside. Wonderful temperature, so it's ideal, mate, absolutely ideal.
Right then, let's get down to serious stuff, because as soon as that happened the other day, I knew we had to speak to you. I know that you're very close to Mark Cavendish. You've followed exactly what it means for him to make all the sacrifices that he's made, be away from the family. I saw your professional reaction. As a mate, what was your reaction there behind the scenes?
I think we've all got... I think that was one of the only times, and we've all got riders in the peloton who we know reasonably well as friends. And quite often, when something like this happens, well, this is really rare, isn't it? That the lines are blurred between friendship and professionalism, and I think that's fine on the odd occasion because of how emotional sport is, and especially the seismic event that was. It really was something big, and I spoke to, just to put that into a little bit of perspective, I spoke to Mr. Prudhomme, in the mix zone afterwards, and his face was beaming with delight. And I said, and he'd been asked some questions previous, and I thought, what question can I ask him? And I said, well, Christian, what was your personal reaction to when Mark Cavendish crossed the line? And he said, I was smiling, I cheered, and also I watched the faces of the two riders that were second and third, Philipsen and Christoph, and he said, I've never seen second and third in a bunch sprint smiling as they crossed the line. Even Jasper Philipsen, you know. I think that gives you a sense of the occasion. But for me, yeah, it was, I saw Peter Cavendish before. I saw his son, who's acting, a Finn, who's acting as his kind of personal photographer. He's only a young lad out on the tour with his dad. And everybody was very nervous. And it was a finish, as you know, as you called it superbly, Rob, out in the sticks a little bit, so it wasn't too densely packed with people, so you could move around with relative freedom compared to some of the city centre finishes. So I had a good opportunity to chat, and Peter was a bag of nerves, blessed, with all the kids, and so was Finn. And then, I don't know, I had your comms in my ear. I was actually with Anders, and we have our phones with the footage on, but it's generally a bit of a delay in a bunch sprint. So Anders had one headphone, I had one, I was leaning into him, and then I heard your commentary, and then you saw the reaction, which I won't repeat on here. There was an expletive, that popped out, and that was me, and that was me because I know what he's gone through, I know the sacrifices he's made to a degree. And I think for Mark, it's how hard he's had to work to be competitive in this new era. You know, when we talk about his age, his longevity, the span of victories, the different eras of sprinting, which he's passed through and excelled every single time. Okay, the wins are fewer now, but he can still do it. And to be at that level takes a remarkable amount of sacrifice. And we text quite a bit, and then there was this period before the tour of probably 2 months where I didn't hear from him at all. And then he messages out of the blue about something, apologising it hadn't been in touch. I said, it's fine. He said, I've just locked myself down. Wasn't speaking to friends really, just family. Went and trained. And he said, it's been really hard, but he's worked so hard. Worked on his climbing as well. And we saw that the other day, although the second stage that Biniam won, there was a lot of the big sprinters out the back, and Cav was there, wasn't he? You know, he's in good nick. But to get to good nick at 39 years of age, although he's got, you know, so much class, he's got to work super, super hard. And I think it's the amount of time he spent away from his family, and now he's finally got that win. It was a cathartic release for him, for his family, and for everybody who knows him. It was a momentous moment. It really, really was. But it was just over. The place was just full of joy. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, and the riders were queuing up to file past him just to pat him on the back or give him a little bit of a wave and acknowledge what he'd achieved. So to be on the ground and witness it, Rob, was a real privilege.
Well, even if we hadn't seen it, just listening to you there for the last couple of minutes really paints the picture, and paints the picture of how emotionally important it is for you. In terms of the team, you could also tell there was buy-in straight from day one.
Yeah.
I mean, he had an army around him when he was suffering in the heat there in Tuscany, and then going over to Rimini on that first stage. They bought in as well, and you could see what they did with the equipment, the suit. You could, just looking, you could tell that it was a slightly different colour than the rest of the team. So different material, the bidons, the bikes. You know, Mark Renshaw's come all the way over from Australia. Vinokurov, team been in a bit of trouble, let's be honest. They haven't been winning.
Yep.
So he believed that is also one of the most incredible things. The project, you know, I don't know how much it required selling to them, but they really bought in. Yeah, definitely.
And I think as well as that, I mean, what that does, having all that trust in you, not so much trust, faith. Faith and trust are two different things, but faith in a rider to deliver. And obviously all the riders they've signed, Morkov, Ballerini, for example, riders that he's ridden with in the past, assembling this team. And when you look at the Astana squad, save for Lutsenko, who does his own thing really, doesn't he? Because they do have to win races elsewhere, but essentially it's Cav's team. And if you, I mean, it's almost like Vingegaard had all his chips on a table down in Monaco at some casino, and has gone pushed them all into the centre, and they've all got Cav on them. Right, that's it. We're all in, and what that creates as well as resource for Cav to work with, and every detail looked at with people that he trusts. What it creates is pressure, and the pressure was ramped up, and that extraordinary 5 days between him suffering and almost, everybody was worried about him. Like, I mean, it was but also him knowing that this was just the heat, it was a blip, but the transformation in that period of time was absolutely extraordinary. And in terms of a narrative arc, how dramatic can you get it? I mean, literally, even our own commentators, this looks bad. We couldn't, Jens on the bike, this looks bad. You couldn't not acknowledge what we were seeing unfolding. And it was sad, wasn't it? But he somehow pulled himself through. And it seems, when you look at what he's achieved, back a couple of years ago, last year to the Giro, his final Giro in the national champions jersey, you know, he'd had a lot of bad luck in the sprints. He delivers. When the pressure is at its highest, that's when Mark Cavendish somehow, and that's what makes him the champion that he is, that's the motivation, the most acute, ridiculously hard pressure. That's where he comes into his own and functions at a level that most people would completely and utterly capitulate. And that's the fascinating thing for me, him as a person, how he copes with that, how he thrives on it, his serenity, his calmness on the day before he won, and the day before actually. I've never seen him so calm. Normally he's like twitchy and moving around and you have to follow him with the mic, you know, he knows this, but he's been ridiculously composed, markedly different than previous editions of the Tour. I've spoken to him, and he delivered, and what an incredible sprint. It wasn't your classic Morkov dropping him off, creating loads of space. He had to think, he had to ride on the instinct that separates him from the rest. That's why he is the greatest sprinter of all time, because sprinting is about power, but it's about the application of power, and it's about craft, and that sort of craft. It's a shame it kind of didn't happen in Italy because it was Renaissance-esque. It was a masterstroke of innate instinct that we saw, and I think it was not just because of the number. I think when you look back at a lot of his wins, when HTC, for example, dominated the lead out, when nobody else really had a chance, that wasn't an armchair. Okay, he was put in the right place, but still 800 metres of K to go. He was on his own, wasn't he? And it was that. It's like, okay, he's still got it, you know. And that sprint will live in my memory for forevermore, one of his finest.
And it was just one of the stories of what's been a tremendous week. I mean, it's been a bit of a fairy tale week, hasn't it? Because what about Biniam Girmay? That man is on fire, man.
Yeah, and he's been a pleasure to get to know. And that's the wonderful thing about being on the ground, Rob, as you know, is the interaction we get with the teams. And obviously there are characters that reappear a lot because they're holding a jersey, and Win is the only rider yet to have won multiple stages. And what just a beautiful, wonderful human being he is, you know, an inspiration, and ridiculously modest, but clearly in the form of his life. And I think it was yesterday morning I said, Biniam, are you in the form of your life? And he said, I think so, but I also think I've been in the form of my life for a couple of years, but I haven't had the run of the green. He's had a lot of bad luck, which happens in bike racing sometimes. So I think the form that we're seeing now is the form that he's had since he burst onto the scene, really, with his first standout victory against Wevelgem. And he says, I'm not far off that, but he is better and more confident. And the sorts of riders that he's beating here, I mean, I know Mads Pedersen isn't here, but I tell you what, I think he would have run Mads Pedersen pretty close on that one. So he has been a revelation, and it's been a tour, save for Pogacar, who's just doing Pogacar things, and we'll just come to that in a moment. It has been a tour for the underdog, really. When you look at it, Intermarché with 2 stage wins, Total Energies, I would call them almost a forgotten team with the greatest of respect, a big team that's constantly under-delivered. But Telgis has been there knocking on the door for a couple of years now, and what a win that was. And then Bardet, and then Bardet, Vauquelin, blimey. The French, it's pretty hard actually living with Louis Pierre now on the team. He's absolutely
he's
loving
enjoying
it.
Himself, is he?
He's really enjoying himself. But it has been we bump into a lot of our colleagues in different TV stations and the press, and I think to a person, and within our Eurosport team as well, this is vintage, and we've still got. We're not even halfway. We've only done 9 stages, Rob, and so yeah, Girmay stand out. He's looking good to win the green jersey now. I really do think he's going to win that because of his consistency, his ability to fight on all terrains more than anybody. You know, he's kind of Kelly-esque, really, isn't he? He can win bunch sprints, and also he can climb pretty well. And yesterday's stage, blimey, astonishing! What a bike race! And there's a lot of talk, isn't there? Does gravel have a place in Grand Tours? And I think it does. I think it's, I asked
Just
Fred
don't
Wright
ask a certain couple of team bosses.
No. But again, I'm not. Maybe I'd have a different point of view if I was still riding and in there, and I might have a different point of view. But right now, what I know is they are entertaining us. They are thrilling us with. They're racing with abandon, and that's important because of the way the sport is in terms of training, in terms of the fitness levels of these riders. They're still riding like it was like 1985 or something like that, or back in the 70s. They're just taking chunks out of each other, and it was spectacular and confounding as well when Jonas wouldn't ride with Tadej or with Remco, and at the press conference both Tadej and Remco were a little bit angry, and the fact they're angry means that you could argue that Jonas is kind of winning the mind games thing. I love it. This tension, Rob, it's just brilliant, isn't it?
If he's as good in the third week mountains as he can be, and there's still a question mark because yes, he might be good now and he's raced to get fit, and where he is now is an absolute miracle compared to where he was in that hospital in the Basque Country. But if he is that good in the third week, that is where he comes into his own, and he'll think, well, a minute and a little bit, thank you very much. So yeah, the race is on, and the other two probably know that to sleep a little easier at night, they could do with some time.
Yeah, and one thing I've noticed, especially with Anders, who chats a lot to Jonas in the mornings, is Jonas's comportment. He is very relaxed because the pressure's off, really. He wasn't it was 50-50 to even ride the Tour de France, let alone be in legitimate contention. And you're quite right. As the days go on and we get towards that brutal final week, and we've got two mountain stages at the end of this week coming, haven't we, leading into the rest day, and a few more flat undulating stages, just to build that shape. I actually think he's a threat, and the sharpness of his reactions on terrain that didn't favour him yesterday. When he got across gaps, he was isolated at points, but never really looked to be in trouble, and actually never really showed his hand. He never attacked, didn't really need to. And I think it was wise actually not to ride with the others. Remco was angry because he was definitely angry. I think he thought if they'd have ridden together, they would have distanced Roglic, and it would have been a 3-horse race, eliminating Roglic. That now isn't the case. Roglic is still there in the mix, and that's frustrated Remco. But Jonas I think he's a legitimate threat, and I would imagine the odds are now coming down against. Still, Tadej's to lose. Tadej looks good. He looks imperious, but and I just love the way that man races. Sometimes it puzzles me, some of the moves he makes, but boy, it's entertaining. But he just forces teams to chase, isn't he? And he's got that sort of engine. But for his sake, I just hope he doesn't run out of fuel. But we'll see. It's certainly a magnificent spectacle, Rob. I mean, in yesterday's stage, actually chapeau to the organisers for creating a stage like that. Even that without the gravel would have been a really punchy, difficult stage with the crosswinds and stuff. I like the circuit classic-esque stages. I do think they have a place.
Now, you mentioned fuel there. I could sit talking to you all day about the Tour de France, mate. I absolutely love speaking to you about the racing, especially with your experience and how close you're getting. But what we don't want you to do is run out of fuel yourself this week, because you are making your debut on the motorbike. Imagine I'm the one in the mix zone now. You're walking through. You're the one making your debut, and I'm asking you, how are you feeling?
I'll say good morning, Rob. Thanks, mate. I'll probably say something like, I think I'm going to take this day by day, and I am going to take it day by day. But firstly, I'm thrilled at the opportunity to be offered to give it a crack. Is brilliant, and I've got big boots to fill, haven't I? Coming off the back of Jens's incredible 9-day stint and what he does, he's made that role his own, as had Adam. And I've been sharing a lot of time with Jens. He's been very generous in his advice about how to approach things, and look at it from your own unique perspective. I think that's the key. Pete as well, who's behind the scenes, making sure we're well equipped and advised on how things work technically. We'll probably have a deeper chat this afternoon about how things go. Final few tweaks to my Moto kit, but I'm excited. I'm a little bit anxious, but I think mild anxiety, nervousness is a good thing when you're doing something quite new. But I've got a nice sprint stage to bed myself in. I'm not going to be thrown into the gravel or a mountain stage. So a nice sprint stage to bed myself in, and then we'll just see. I'm going to take it day by day. But I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled at the opportunity to be amongst it at the tour and hopefully give you my unique perspective that's been offered up to me. So I'm very excited, mate.
And you can catch Matt's chat with Mark Cavendish across our coverage this week, live and on demand on Eurosport and Discovery+. Elsewhere, it's been quite the fight for the green jersey, hasn't it? We talked about Biniam Girmay, who had a troubled spring, there or thereabouts, ending with a nasty crash, though, in the Giro D'Italia. Since then, however, it's been quite the comeback.
Girmay is on the barriers here. It's going to be a 3-2 to the line. Oh, Biniam has done it! That is amazing! Biniam Girmay wins it for Intermarché. Girmay has picked himself back up from absolutely nowhere and is waiting to go for this. Oh, Girmay kicks back and says thank you very much. So many were in the frame, but in the end, the power of the green jersey has delivered.
Time to go behind the scenes at the Tour now and into the car with EF Education EasyPost.
Over the last few years, teams have become increasingly aware of their environmental impact and how a team operates. This year in the Tour de France, it's the first time that some teams have made the switch to a fully electric vehicle within the convoy. One of those teams is EF Education EasyPost, and this beautiful pink, it's almost giving Hey Barbie vibes, Cadillac.
This is the first vehicle that I've encountered that can actually make the race distance, or electric vehicle that can actually make the race distances day in, day out, and can complete the entirety of the Tour de France. We experimented with electric vehicles back in 2018, and we were the first team to do that as well. And those cars did not have the range to do the Tour de France. And so this is the first time where the technology of cars has caught up with the technology of bikes.
Inside, you've got the full setup here. Just talk me through almost the cockpit for the sports director.
Okay, well, the sports director's, the guy running the race, is always going to be in the passenger seat because we want the driver concentrating on driving. First off, we have 3 different radios. First is race radio, meaning that's communication from ASO, from the race jury, giving us instructions. That's obviously listen only. The second radio is just from car to car. This is internal communication from car to car. And then the pink radio is from car to rider. Then we've got, this will be a television screen to watch the race for the director that's sitting in the passenger seat. And then this right here is for an iPad where we're looking at maps, courses, gradient changes, all the information that we have downloaded about the course that day. So the way an electric motor works is very different from a gasoline engine. With an electric motor on the descents of the mountains, it's actually recharging the battery the entire time. The other part is driving in the convoy and the caravan of the race, at the speeds that we're at, which is generally between 40 and 60 kilometers an hour. An electric motor is actually amazingly efficient at those speeds. So, I just love pink Cadillac. I mean, it's, there I don't know how many songs are there about pink Cadillacs floating around out there. So, I mean, they're 80s songs, okay, but, we get a little 80s vibe going on with a little bit of 2024. I love the color, and you're going to be able to see this thing from outer space.
Six stages coming up this week at the Tour de France. Week 2 of racing and the race heading south with possibility of crosswinds, sprint stages breakaways, a day in the Massif Central and a big weekend in the Pyrenees. It's getting very, very serious after it's been a fairy tale opening 9 days. You can join us as always, Eurosport Discovery Plus, for all the live and on-demand action. In the evenings on the Eurosport Cycling YouTube channel, we'll be back with the short highlights. Plus you can see clips of the last few kilometres of each stage if you have to miss anything anywhere. Now, the second women's Grand Tour of the season is also on the way. That's in Italy. The Giro D'Italia Women is live on Eurosport Discovery Plus. As well, you US viewers can join us on Max. Everything, each and every day, for all of you cycling fans. So, what's going to happen next? The Tour's on the way. It's been quite the opening 9 days, hasn't it? And we've had those beautiful, beautiful stories. So, we'll leave you with this. It's worth one more view, isn't it?
The one thing I've always tried hard to inspire than anything else is a never give up attitude.
Here we go. As with every sprint day at this Tour de France, we could be witnesses to history. Sit yourselves down, strap yourselves in. This is going to go supersonic. Mark Cavendish, a shot at glory, a chance for immortality in cycling terms. It is time to go, it's time to sprint. Only now they will start to see the finish line. There is Mark Cavendish through the centre. He's hit the front here. Mark Cavendish is there. This is history. First there was Merckx, now it's Mark Cavendish, the greatest of all time.
Well, I'm in a little bit of disbelief. I've done 15 Tour de France's now. Things have to still go your way. Big gamble come here and try and win at least one stage, you know. And we've done it.
He's just a fine wine. He's just been mega committed. I don't know how many days he's been with his family, but this year it's not many.
He was, he is, and he will stay the greatest sprinter in the history of the Tour.